Welcome to our next podcast. My name is Michael Penn. Joining me today is a very nifty fellow. His name is Joji Kokuryo, and he is the managing director of Bay City Ventures. And don't mind that train going by because we are in Tokyo. That means bullet trains are going by all the time. So first of all, Joji, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself briefly? Who are you? And how is it that you're in the gaming industry?
Yep. Well, thank you, Michael, and thank you to Asia Gaming Brief for having me. I guess most people in the industry would know me from my time in Macau, working with Aruze Gaming, and some time in the Philippines as well with the company. And right now, I've been working in Japan for the past 2 years. Of course, continuing gaming industry consulting business, but also working with a lot of local governments, educational entities, and helping them to inform what the industry actually is like, and not really just kind of the books and the stories that they hear.
Well, our topic today is we're going to do a little bit of around the world of Japan to figure out which local governments are in the race and which aren't. So first of all, why don't you tell us which local governments are definitely in the race and which other local governments might surprise us at a later stage?
Sure, of course. I think, to do a little Epcot run of the places that have actually officially raised their hand. Obviously, there's Osaka with the city and the prefecture both on board. We have Yokohama, which is actually my hometown. I'm calling in from Yokohama right now. And that's a city, actually, but it's a designated city, so they can make their own choices. For the regional areas, we have Wakayama Prefecture and also Nagasaki Prefecture in Kyushu. And so those are the four areas that officially raised their hand. And, we know that behind the scenes, or not even behind the scenes, quite publicly, there's other areas that have done their homework, or they've started before and kind of dropped it, and maybe they might be coming back. And so, to list those would be, of course, Tokyo, the one that everyone wants to know about, Aichi Prefecture, not exactly Nagoya City, but yeah, Prefecture, and we're still hearing we're still hearing rumblings about Hokkaido, and of course, Chiba City as well.
Well, first of all, before we get to the ones that are actually in the race, do you have any predictions or odds on the fact that one of these others might jump into the race?
Well, I don't want to give out the odds because I want to be the one winning on those bets, but I would say that it's honestly 50-50 for Tokyo. I know everyone is asking, and in terms of Aichi, Chiba, Hokkaido, I mean, I give them like a 25% chance each, and that has more to do with just the procedures that they need to go through, which at this point, city council, local council, prefectural council, setting budgets, it's quite tight. So that's why I would lower their chances a bit.
Well, I guess let's go from the biggest to the smallest of the four that are in the race. The biggest, of course, is Yokohama. Your hometown, where you're speaking to us right now. Do you maintain your optimism that this is going to happen, or do you think it's going to come crashing down next year because of political reasons?
Well, to be quite honest with the situation with the referendum movement right now, it's something that's quite important from a public point of view. But at the end of the day, in Yokohama, everything comes down to the mayoral election next year. The referendum could be positive for the IR movement, and they could go forward. And if the mayor changes and the new mayor wants to drop the IR bid, then it's done. So, yeah, whether or not Mrs. Hayashi wants to rerun and go for another term, whether opposition can actually set up one candidate. They've always had two candidates, fairly evenly splitting the votes against Mrs. Hayashi. So it's quite a big turning point, and that's going to decide the fate of the IR in Yokohama.
All right, well, moving on to the next biggest, which is Osaka. So Osaka, for a long time, has been considered to be the most certain of the certain to get one of the licenses. Do you feel that the more recent hesitations, maybe from MGM side, or maybe from just the political situation with Mayor Ichiro Matsui apparently going to be retiring from politics. Do you think this shakes the prospects at all, or do you think it's moving forward no matter what?
A lot of the points that are challenges for Osaka, not just with the political situation, is really the development, because they probably have the least developed land for the IR to be built compared to the other regions. Um, and I think definitely that as soon as MGM Oryx, their consortium was the only one to kind of, officially put their entry into the RFP, it really, narrowed down their situation to what that consortium wants to do.
Do you feel that Osaka lost too much leverage by having only one bidder in its RFP, or do you think that, these two particular sides, Osaka city government and the and the MGM Oryx consortium, are just so committed to the project that it doesn't really matter that much?
Oh, they definitely lost a lot of leverage. And especially the fact that the timing wise, it was quite unlucky for them as well, with everything pausing after they, finished the acceptance for the RFP. So yeah, I mean, there's no way that it's really a positive for Osaka. But from the business point of view, if I was MGM, yeah, I would take advantage of that situation as much as I could.
And is there anything else about Osaka worth mentioning before we move on to the two regional bidders?
Again, it's a new place. It's also landfill, quite new in terms of how stable the land is. So there's going to be a lot of development costs. And so again, whatever they do moving forward, I hope there's a plan B.
So, what is the situation in Nagasaki, generally speaking?
Well, it's quite refreshing. It was kind of the first positive movement news in Japan IR in quite a while, where Nagasaki just released their plans for their RFP going forward. I think currently it's set January. They want to have the operator decided by the summer or the autumn. So they're moving forward. I would say that as a site, it's quite interesting, just considering the locality to not just the Kyushu area, but also to Eastern Asia, especially the northern China region. And the other point is, I think it's quite unique because you've been in Japan quite a long time, so I'm sure Michael. But Kyushu is a really unique area. They work together very well when it helps them, but they're all quite very unique and special in their own way. So it's quite interesting to see, how the region will work together to push the bid once, the talks and the actual business part get moving. You look at the airport situation, it's quite interesting. There's actually multiple international airports nearby that have the ability to be developed, meaning there's still lots for airplanes. One of the important things in the gaming industry is not just getting there, but getting out as well. And so that was one of the issues brought up, for example, like in Hokkaido, what happens if there's a snowstorm? So on that front, I think that it's actually an advantage when you look at the airline situation. When you talk about the roads, again, it depends. Are you trying to attract all the local people from nearby Kyushu? Or are you trying to attack the select few from Eastern Asia? Depending on the operator, I think they'll either see that as not much of an issue that they can solve in the long run, or if they might, if they want to bring all the local people on the roads and the trains, that's going to require a lot of development. So I think depending on what kind of operator strategy exists, it could be an advantage.
Okay. And that brings us to the one which says it's the smallest market, which is Wakayama. But of course, it's also very close to Osaka Yumeshima, especially by sea, especially from Kansai International Airport, if there's a high-speed boat service like they're talking about. So how do you see the lay of the land in Wakayama, where we have a very proactive governor, but it's not always clear how much of the rest of the system is behind it?
Yeah, well, Wakayama's in a really unique situation because similar to Osaka, they've started their RFP. And there's two different groups, I wouldn't call them full consortium, but two different groups that have expressed their interest officially and put their names in the hat. And so for them, I think right now it's more of they just need to clarify what kind of IR are they planning to build. And what I mean by what kind of IR is, in the case there is another one in Osaka, how are you going to compete? Is there actually synergies? Is it better if the Osaka bid actually doesn't move forward? So that's a huge variable on their front. And I think for Wakayama as well, I mean, their site is, very well maintained. It's already partially developed. So on that front, similar to Nagasaki, where the initial cost won't be as much as, the metropolis markets. And as you mentioned, the huge international airports, so Kansai International, nearby is also an advantage for them.
Now, before we wrap up, is there anything else about the contest between these four local governments and possibly a few, one or two or three more, that needs to be said before we close the gates here?
Sure. Well, I'm actually quite worried. And when I say worried, what I mean is that the government will go for it. This is a national policy. They've come this far, and again, the local governments will make their bid. And what I worry about though is that can all the local governments make their bids to the central government in the end? And what I mean by that is, again, what I was saying about Osaka situation, about Yokohama situation, and it is a quite realistic possibility we end up with just two local governments actually submitting their development plans, IR development plans. So again, one of the things I hope to see is that it's whatever is developed is for the local people. Definitely has to help local businesses. And so whether it goes forward or not, I hope that the local government takes the opportunity to educate, and not just educate, but also kind of give the opportunity for their local enterprises to see an international stage.